The New York Jets are officially eliminated from playoff contention, falling to Miami, falling to 0-4 in the AFC East, and missing the playoffs for the 15th consecutive seasons. A lot to talk about on today. Brady Cook's future with the Jets, the pieces that have to stay, but more importantly, the pieces that have to go in 2026. We have a lot to talk about. Can't wait to hear what your thoughts on this game are. Let's get it rocking and rolling here on Rich Sports Talk. Welcome into Rich Sports Talk, your home for all the latest and greatest on the New York Jets. Make sure to jump into our live stream, drop your thoughts and comments and questions, super chat to jump to the front of the line, and also make a donation to the channel. I mean, it is the holiday season. You might as well during this season. If you missed the show, you can always check us out on our YouTube channel and wherever podcasts are available. If you can listen to a podcast, you can listen to Rich Sports Talk. Let's just get this out of the way very quickly. It was an ugly game against Miami Dolphins. There's no way to sugarcoat it. And I think what's disappointing, especially after seeing the effort the last few weeks, is how this team, especially this defense, came out. And look, I know they're undermanned at this point, but it just was a tough look out of the gate. The Jets, once again, go without interception. I can look at this as a one game, but I'm looking this as the big picture. And I've said this the last couple of weeks, and this is a theme that I'm not breaking from. This end of the stretch for the Jets is all about answering questions. It's about seeing who is going to have a role and what role they're going to have for this team going forward. I think we've gotten a more definitive answer on John Mechie and A.D. Mitchell. Both came back down to earth. Mechie, another huge touchdown drop today. Again, like I've been saying, I feel they're going to be solid 3 to 4 depth pieces, but they're not going to be this team's number 2. That person's coming in a trade, free agency, or the upcoming draft. We'll talk about the defense, which needs some major overhauls, but there's certain answers we got today. And again, all these answers aren't necessarily good answers, but at least there is clarity. I think the first answer, first and foremost, is that Steve Wilks should not have a job next year with this team. I don't think Aaron Glenn's going to fire him mid-season. I don't think he's going to fire him before the end. But it is clear that, yes, this defense is outmanned. Yes, this defense is playing with backup players. Yes, this defense is not overly talented. But this defense also isn't imaginative. I was watching the beginning of the post-game show with Bart. They don't have discipline. They don't have great technique. And I understand that also falls on this head coach. But I think that this defense needs a major overhaul, both with players, but also with this coaching staff. I think that Steve Wilks was brought in for this team as almost a holdover. And Steve Wilks has, I think, shown his colors many other places. He's been a one-and-done defensive coordinator many times in his career. But the lack of creativity, the lack of having a game plan. You know Tua is going to get the ball quick. You know that this team's also going to run the ball. Let's face it, Tua did not have a good game in this game. The Jets could not stop the run. The Jets could not attack holes. They couldn't get to the ball. They couldn't create any pressure. And what's concerning to me now is there's players on this team that I have major concerns with, but the hard part I have is this weird situation where I'm going, how much of this is on, quote, the players and how much of this is on the coaching? Because Steve Wilks, I've seen his defenses. They're not good. There's no imaginative. There's no creativity. There's no set game plan. It just seems like a vanilla defense that every week comes out and just gets blasted, just gets beaten down. Like, I'm sorry, but like one of the first press questions, if I was in that press room, is saying, Aaron Glenn, are you going to take play calling? Again, I would like to see Aaron Glenn do that. Maybe this defense will look better. I think at this point, if I'm Aaron Glenn, I've seen enough from Tanner Engstrom, and I understand the offense has its issues too. But I'm saying, look, Steve, to be honest with you, I'm going to call the plays. I'm not going to embarrass you and fire you during the season, but you better start polishing off that resume. because I'm going to make a move. I'm going to bring in some of my other guys. And the other thing, too, is I look at this, too, and I felt like with this Jet team that with Wilkes, one of the big reasons he was brought in was because he was a former head coach. And I just look at this and I go, this defense is not good. And it's hard because I'm like, is Jermaine, Will McDonald, who have been painfully quiet, like how much of this is on them and how much is on this defensive coordinator? So my answer is Steve Wilkes should not be this defensive coordinator. Another answer, Tyrod Taylor shouldn't be this backup quarterback next year. Once again, Tyrod Taylor gets hurt. It's a groin. I'm curious to see how long he's potentially out. But this is definitely something that you can't, if you're going to try to ease a rookie in next season, I just look at this and I go that this is a team that definitely needs to bring in another veteran. If you had to ask me today, I don't think there's great options. I can't remember if Marcus Mariota is a free agent. Again, I liked what I saw with him with Washington last week. There aren't great options out there, but the Jets need to do something because Tyrod Taylor, you can't go into the next season with Tyrod, quote, being your bridge, and he goes down in week 2. I mean, just look at the track record. And I think you got that answer today. And I know, let's talk about Brady Cook. We'll talk about other key issues on the team because there's a lot. I kind of, this is what I expected from Brady Cook. He is what he is. He's an undrafted free agent that the Jets brought in to be the third string quarterback. He had some moments, a nice 24-yard pass to Adonai Mitchell. But at the end of the day, you saw a kid who had a fumble in this game, 2 interceptions, both in the red zone, 14 of 30, 163. The one thing I'll say about Brady Cook is this. I think he had some flashes, but he showed you what he is. Thrown into this game, unfortunately, without really a game plan. Maybe the Jets have him be the starter next week and bring in another guy. I would personally bring in another guy if Tyrod's injured for any time. I don't think Fields should be back on this team. I think he is cooked right now. They've already worked out Desmond Ridder. If I would try to bring in another quarterback behind Brady Cook. The one thing I will say with Brady Cook is he did push the ball and he did not look overwhelmed. And I think that is a very big thing. Because I remember last week I was watching the Vikings quarterback that was in that position get thrown in there. And he looked completely overwhelmed. He looked like he did not belong, that he looked scared. And I'll say this, Brady Cook did not look intimidated. I think he at least looked somewhat confident. And he didn't look lost in the moment. But again, this is also a third string undrafted quarterback in the National Football League. I don't care what team you are. You say that following sentence, 95% of the time, you're not winning the football game if the other team has their quarterback. Let's just be honest. And look, there's a lot to get in on this defense, and I want to focus on some other answers and questions. Again, this is primarily what I'm saying. The Jets need to figure out who's a long-term solution. What's an answer for 2026? I think you got an answer with an unbelievable punter who, again, I think should be in the Pro Bowl. You have an answer on special teams with Isaiah Williams, who is an elite returner, who, again, you have to bring back, and I do think is a great player to have. You have an elite special teams coach. As bad as Steve Wilkes has been and you don't have a DC, I think you have an elite special teams coach, and that is something very special. And someone that's not going to probably move off of your staff if you at least compensate them well. Tanner Engstrom, again, it's hard to work in this league when you're on a third-string quarterback. Tyrod Taylor's probably not top 35 quarterback anymore. And look, as a Jet fan, we've seen this how many times. When you don't have a quarterback, it's like bringing a BB gun to against an AK-47. It's not going to work. It really isn't. And again, I look at this defense and I have some big questions about this defensive line. Especially Will McDonald, and I look at Jermaine Johnson, and I can't believe that I'm going to utter this following sentence. But again, you had more pressures from Michael Clemens. Michael Clemens and Quincy Williams had that sack. I think they did award it to Quincy. I have to double check. I believe that they did. But originally it was Aside they did give it to Quincy, but I look at this offense. Mason Taylor had a tough drop that led to a pick, but overall 5 catches, 51 yards, and 8 targets. John Mechie, a couple critical drops. Adonai Mitchell, only 1 catch after last week having 8 catches. But again, it's hard to fully evaluate with a young quarterback like this. We'll get into some of the post-game comments. But before we do that, and before I get to your questions, there's one group I want to focus on today because they have been horrendous. And they're a group that I think needs a major overhaul. And I do think we are going to see that this offseason. That's the linebackers. Because when we came into this season, we felt pretty good, I think, about the linebackers. And look, Quincy, since his benching, has played well. Quincy was the only Jet with a sack today. But I thought today was hot and cold Quincy. Jamien Sherwood on paper, again, leads this team with tackles. But he is getting blown up in the run game. And you can see, too, that their linebackers are just getting blown off the ball. And we saw this with the Robert Saleh defense even last year, too, where they don't have size in that linebacker room. And when we came in the offseason, I really thought that they would invest in Jamien Sherwood and then trade Quincy and bring in another bigger back. But you look this draft, they brought in Francisco or Kiko Mayaga. We thought that could be something. Again, I thought it was an overdraft, one of the few mistakes Muji's made. And look, he got bullied today. The one play where I believe it wasn't the he was downfield. They were running into the end zone. He had the running back in his arms and just let him get out. It's clear that the Jets need an overhaul in the linebacker. It's funny because, yes, the deep line wasn't great, but at least I've seen some flashes. At least I can say I can see Juwan Briggs and Harrison Phillips being a part of this team. Even in the secondary, I know Malachi Moore had that horrible missed tackle, but I've seen some flashes for him. I've seen some flashes from A.Z. Thomas. Brandon Stevens looks like at least a starting caliber corner. I see at least some answers. With this linebacking core, is there a world where I could see none of these guys being back next year? Maybe Kiko as a backup or borderline roster player. But Quincy, I think the Jets will try to keep. But again, I don't know what his thought's going to be with this team. I think Jamien Sherwood's gone from this team. I think Jamien Sherwood is going to be a trade piece this offseason. Because on paper, I get what the Jets were doing. They thought this is a mid-20s linebacker. He's a young piece of our core. And again, it's one of those things when you're coming into a new front office that you want to make a statement to the fan base. I think it was a statement to the fan base that we're trying to keep the good young players here. But I think this relationship with Sherwood has soured. I mean, they have benched him this season. He has not been the same player. And unfortunately, I hate to do this to Jamien Sherwood, but when you're paid the big contract, you have to produce. And this regime has already said they'll move off of big contracts. They'll admit they made a mistake. They moved off of Sauce Gardner not even halfway after his contract, like halfway through the first season. His contract hadn't even kicked in yet, and they moved him. I mean, I think Jamien Sherwood, if the Jets eat some money, you can get a day 3 pick for. I think that if you called Robert Saleh, if he ends up with another head coaching job, or he stays in San Francisco, or you called up Jeff Ulbrich and offered Jamien Sherwood, who fits in their defense, I think they would answer the call. But I do think that this linebacking core, let's be frank, I think that it needs a major overhaul. And I think they need more size, more physicality. And the problem, too, is not only have they been liabilities in the run game, they've been liabilities in the pass game. Last week, the linebackers were targeted 10 times. They allowed 9 receptions. The tight ends are going all over the field, and it's a lot of the safety. But again, I mean, you look at Ollie Gordon just going wild in this game, and you just look at Greg Dulcich had 41 yards, had a 23-yard catch in this game. And the fact that they couldn't generate a pass rush, and I think this is a concern, and I said this in my pregame show. How does this team view Jermaine and Will McDonald? Again, I really love Jermaine. I really liked Will McDonald's upside, but again, Jermaine Johnson, 1 assisted tackle today. I mean, it's not good enough. And if you're not going to contribute a pass rusher, you got to set the edge and be great in run defense. And let's face it, the Jets' run defense, Wasn't exactly great today. It was downright abysmal. But look, I think they have great special teams. I think they still have some good building blocks to build off of. And I do think the end zone design should stay. I like that end zone design, I guess, was the rival uniform again. I don't know what your thoughts are on the rivalry uniform. Personally, I didn't love them. Again, I feel like the Jets could have gone different directions. I personally would have preferred a 60s throwback to the Namath Jet jerseys like they did last year. But again, that's just me. We'll get to some of the post-game conference. Super Chat to jump to the front of the line. Danger Zone, who's got a great show every Friday. Wow. What's up, my man? So this is also a big thing, too, the Who. I'll get into this. So I'm glad you brought this up because I was going to get to this a little bit later, but I'll get into this now. So I talked a lot about this on the pre-show, and I know a lot of people, again, I know that there is definitely a big portion of Jet fans that are rooting for the tank. I've told you my stance. I'm not for that. But I think what will help the Jets, and again, they haven't moved in draft position, they're still 6, is one of two things. And again, after seeing Fernando Mendoza perform last night, I think it's piquing a lot of people's interest. The two things that will help the Jets are what's happening at the top of the draft right now. You have two teams that seemingly have their quarterback. Now, again, I know the Titans will throw the smoke screen that they don't want another quarterback, but I think that they're going to look to build out that team. The other thing is, and this is what he brings up, the Colts are in a very difficult position. The Colts, when the Jets made the trade at the time for Sauce Gardner, they were the number 1 seed in the AFC. The Colts now are 8-4. The Colts now, actually, I think they're 8-5 now. Yeah, 8-5. So the Colts now have lost 3 in a row. And now you look at them, the Colts are going to be without Daniel Jones for the end of the year. He has a ruptured Achilles from all reports. So now the Jets' second first-round picks, or the 2 first-round picks, are going to look very good. But here's the thing. It's a 9-month recovery. It'll be right up against opening day. And the big thing, too, is even if they just miss the playoffs, they will have the 18th pick. And that's if they just miss the playoffs. Keep in mind, like, you look right now, Riley Leonard's going to be the quarterback the rest of the season. Again, I don't know if they're going to activate Anthony Richardson. There's so much. They have Anthony Richardson on IR. Again, I don't know if, because I don't follow the Colts religiously, I don't know if that's the short-term IR. I don't know if that's the long-term IR. But you look, Riley Leonard is a rookie quarterback, 6th-round pick out of Notre Dame. Again, I really liked him coming out of the draft. I thought he could be a decent backup. But you saw it today. 145 yards, 62% completions, 1 interception. But the one thing about the Colts that is brutal is their schedule. The Colts' schedule down the stretch is absolutely brutal. And now you look at their situation, they missed the playoffs. The Jets have their first-round pick. You want to be in the teens because if you're going to trade up to the number 1 pick, it's better to get a middle-of-the-team pick than what many of us thought, and me included, this was going to be a mid-20 pick. That is a huge difference in terms of evaluating that. In the Colts schedule, I brought it up yesterday on the pre-show. And again, I'm apologize. I tried to do it on Friday, but of course, that day my internet decided of other plans. The Colts remaining 4 games. I don't think they're going to win any of them. At Seattle next week. Home against the 49ers. Home against the Jaguars, who beat them 36-19 today and are playing for the division. And then they finish the season at the Texans. The only way they maybe win that one is if the Texans have wrapped up their playoff spot. But the way the AFC is right now, I think everyone's going to be playing week 17, 18. So, and you look right now, if the draft were today, the pick would be 21. But let's say they finish with 8 wins. They lose the next 4. You look at right now the NFL. Teams that have 6 wins right now, if they can get another 2 wins, maybe bumps the strength of schedule down. Miami now has 6 wins. Baltimore has 6 wins. The Cowboys have 6 wins. Kansas City has 6 wins. there's a lot of teams that could sneak up and move the Colts down the board. And keep in mind, the Jets have the Colts first round pick at 2027. If Daniel Jones gets hurt again, all of a sudden that pick, like you look in Seattle, not Seattle, you look in Indianapolis today, how many people are now questioning that trade? And look, even at the time, I think the Colts did the right thing. I do think it is very important. But let's get some more questions. Baby Face J, our linebackers useless against Super Chat, jumped to the front of the line. They've been rough all season. Quincy has shown some flashes, but with Quincy, even if you re-sign him, is it worth it to bring in a guy who's going to be 30 next year? And again, I don't know how much he wants to play here. He loved playing here with his brother. There could be a world where the Jets offer him, hey, Quincy, we want to give you a $13 million contract. And he goes to them, look, I don't care. I'll go play for 9 or 10 in Dallas where there's no state income tax with my brother. I mean, that could easily happen this offseason. Chris, good to hear from you. Like and hit that subscribe button. JTS, Jets. Again, if you're driving home from MetLife, make sure to give us a like and subscribe. Also, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our latest live streams. If you were at the game, let me know what your thoughts were on this performance. Rez, I don't believe AG as one who can turn this around. He bet on fields and lost hard. How is he turning this around by year 3? I mean, at this point, I'm just hoping he can. Look, there's some things with Glenn that I've liked this year. I think he's gotten better with the post game. I think he's done a good job doing Chris Banjo. I'm waiting. So I'll get to the question that's coming up in a little bit. But look, I think he's shown he can get a good staff. I think Darren Muji has shown that he's made some shrewd moves. Again, I want to see a draft with a whole new scouting department. I think that this draft's going to be crucial for this team. Donald Schaefer 296, great Eagle picture, by the way, my man. Cook's pass came in hot and hitting their hands. They need to catch them. Yeah, the receivers did him no favors today. And that's why I started the show saying, look, I think that A.D. Mitchell and John Mechie are bench pieces. But I also think they're an upgrade over Arian Smith, who, again, was out of the doghouse and butchered a great special teams play by McNamara today. And again, McNamara should be in the Pro Bowl. Isaiah Williams and McNamara should both be in the Pro Bowl, in my opinion. I would say Nick Folk should be 23 to 24, but there's so many great kickers in the NFL. To me, McNamara's been unbelievable. Like, he should at least get those votes. What performance are you talking about, Danger Zone? Just so I can get a little bit of clarity on that Danger Zone. So just let me know what you're thinking. All right, let's get to some of the post-game comments from Aaron Glenn. Again, Aaron Glenn, this game was really disappointing. I didn't have these guys ready to play. That was obvious based on the way they played. Glenn on the 15-year drought. Get better, that's it. That's our process. Before you start consistently win, you got to improve in all areas. If we want to win this league, we have to get better. I'll say this. I'll give Glenn this. I think he's getting better at the post conference. And look, I'm glad he put it on him today. You know, again, a lot of them would just say, oh, the guys weren't ready to play. And he's like, no, it's not me. And I think that's very important as a head coach because, look, they weren't ready to play. They weren't. And I don't think this is a good Miami team. But at the end of the day, I think this defense needs an overhaul. And look, part of this too is, and we're in a weird state, and I brought this up a couple times, especially in recent episodes. Like, how good was this Jet team when we really look at it? I think a lot of this too, and again, I'm one of you. I want to break this playoff drought, this playoff HE double hockey stick. But I think the Jets have some talented pieces. The question is, did they have a talented football team? Because even last year with Aaron Rodgers for a full season, Devontae Adams, all these bells and whistles, this team won 5 games last year. I think that the Jets at least now have a stronger foundation, especially on the offensive side, than they've had. But it's just really frustrating to see where they are today. And look, it's frustrating because it's the longest drought in American sports. And look, Aaron Glenn's got to just get better. And look, at this point too, like it's frustrating. They shouldn't have 249 yards rushing against him. And even Aaron Glenn called it out. And, you know, I think he took this one the way he should. But the one thing is, too, like, just say the sentence. If you're starting an undrafted rookie, or not even starting, but playing it for a majority of the game, in today's NFL, how confident, it doesn't matter who you're playing, how confident you're going to win that game. And look, it's not all Brady Cook's fault. The defense was horrible today. But it shows that this roster has a long way to go. And I also think it is a good thing that this team, Darren Mujer and Glenn, the one thing you want from your front office as a coach is to have a pulse. And I think that they have a pulse that they're saying, look, we're really not that good. We don't have the foundation that maybe we thought we had, and we have a lot of work to do here. Where with Robert Saleh, especially in a lot of the pass regime, I think they kept puffing out, oh, we're a great team. Oh, we have a lot of talent. But the results obviously didn't show that. And yes, the 2022 Jets had a lot of great young pieces on that team. But pieces do not make a football team. And one of the things, too, is this football team has gotten rid of some really good glue pieces. And I think what ultimately undid Saleh and Joe Douglas was getting rid of some of those glue pieces. John Franklin Myers for nothing, moving on from him, moving on from Bryce Huff, and bringing in these flashy Hassan Reddick pieces, some past their prime tackles to hopefully start 17. It doesn't work like that. And look, the Jets coming into this game won 3 of their last 5. I thought they played above their weight class in a lot of games. This one's frustrating because, again, I want to win an AFC East game. I wanted to see them check that box today. But you can tell, like, with this defense, when you have a bad defensive play caller in Wilkes, who I, again, started the show and said he should be gone. You have a defense that is now suffering from injuries and is now in the phase of putting in a lot of young rookies in key moments. A defense where, to me, I think the 3 best players, or who I think are the 3 most talented defensive players on that team, have not played well. I mean, let's just say it. I think Brandon Stevens has played up to his contract, but I love Jermaine Johnson. He has not played up to it again. I know it's tough coming off the Achilles, but again, I look at Jermaine, I look at Will McDonald, and, it's a quiet day on the stat sheet. And you just look at what you're going to do. Okay. You just asked what we thought of the performance, although they didn't show up. They didn't show up. I mean, maybe it's because they just want to wear those jerseys today. I mean, again, I'm not a fan. I haven't been a fan of the rivalry jerseys. I'm a proponent of, I love the throwbacks. I think if you want to do these classic rivalry games, just go back to throwbacks. Like, I think like a great look today would be if you had the Dolphins Dan Marino jerseys against the Jets Joe Namath jerseys. I think that would have been great. Like, I think sometimes, again, were they sharp jerseys? Were they sleek jerseys? Sure. But again, I wasn't the biggest fan of the jerseys. I'm still a proponent of, I love like the classic uniforms, especially in football. But again, it's frustrating when you look here for this Jet team. Once again, missing the playoffs again. But the front 7, they got their what's kicked. I mean, and that's the sad part, is this is not a good Dolphins offensive line, but they were bullied today. And now you have to wonder, do you go all in on Fernando Mendoza or one of these quarterbacks? I think that is something that you have to keep a very keen eye on, especially. And the other thing, too, is you're getting answers. And even if it's a bad answer, at least you got clarity. I think Mechie and 80, I'm more on Mitchell. Mitchell I don't think was involved in the game plan too much today. But Mechie today, I think he's a guy you try to work with. I think he's obviously higher on the depth chart than Arian Smith, but he's got to keep working that jug machine. I just watched the play today. It's one of those things, too, where Brady Cook puts the ball a little bit behind him But like last week, I think he's trying to score too much. I think he's thinking about getting his head around to get upfield because he was about the 8 or 7 yard line. But, like I said, I don't think Wilkes is the answer as a defensive coordinator. I think you have your special teams coordinator, you got your OC, but they got to go get a new DC. And I think there will be plenty of options. I think it's easier, especially for Aaron Glenn, to find a DC. And I still think that Wilkes, the main reason Wilkes was hired wasn't because he was the best defensive coordinator available, wasn't because he was the most innovative defensive core available. I still go back to the fact, and at the time of signing, I understood why they did it. He was a former head coach. Having someone on the staff that had, even for a brief while, who has been a head coach, who has been in these situations, I do think helps. And again, I think the in-game management, especially last week from Aaron Glenn, was very good. I think Aaron Glenn, again, they pulled off a Hail Mary today, which again, I guess is somewhat of a small miracle. But I've been seeing incremental growth from Aaron Glenn and the staff. The big thing now is they have to get a different DC. And look, I understand that they're undermanned on the defensive side. I understand that they traded two of their best players mid-season, and that's going to impact your defense. The thing that I look at with this defense isn't the lack of talent. It's just the lack of discipline, the lack of mechanics. I'm watching today them trying to punch the ball, and I get it. They're trying to force a turnover, especially because they still haven't gotten an interception again. I still don't, again, Tua gave them opportunities today, but they couldn't finish. But proper technique is if you're the first guy there, you hold the guy up or you start bringing him down. The second guy is the guy that comes in and punches. And just those little things I'm not seeing from Wilkes. Although, of course, a big upset now. A big upset now in Tankathon is the Titans beat the Browns today. So now Tennessee is the second pick in the draft, and the Giants are now the number 1 pick in the draft. Giants, of course, also fired their DC. I made the joke, too. I don't know who's left on their coaching staff to finish the season, but I will say in-season Hard Knocks, that's going to be an interesting episode next week. Look, I don't think Tennessee's moving on from Cam Ward. The big thing is you don't want Vegas to get up there. And I think the other big thing is this for the Jets. Once again, I know Fernando Mendoza is going to be the hot talking point, especially after the Big Ten championship game. But especially if Dante Moore comes out, I think that's going to be the big changer. If they identify both as franchise quarterbacks and they can get 1 or 2 in the draft, I think they'll be fine. The hard part is now if he goes back to school and Simpson comes out. Because, look, Ty Simpson, I know he's gotten a lot of buzz, but we've started to see over the backstretch of games the inaccuracy, the lack of, touch on some of his passes. And, again, I think a lot of it comes down to just not playing that much. Again, he's a 1-year starter. To me, he's a guy, if you draft him, he needs to really sit. Moore is another guy I really think needs to sit. But again, if you're the Giants, they have Jackson Dart. And I understand that maybe they don't want to trade with the Jets, but if the Jets offer you multiple picks to go up and help fill out that roster and build around Jackson Dart, they're not going to say no. And the one thing that also look at this draft too is even if the Jets have to give some picks, there's still a lot of depth in this draft at positions they need. If I had to say what are the 4 biggest needs on the Jets outside of quarterback, I say edge rusher, receiver, safety, and linebacker. And you know what this draft has a lot of? They have a lot of receivers. They have a lot of edges. They have a lot of linebackers. They have a lot of safeties, which I think is a good thing for the Jets. So again, in a weird way too with the Tankathon, the back end of the Tankathon is actually helping the Jets too, because if the Colts miss the playoffs, that pick will be incredibly valuable. Okay. At this point, I'd give Chris Banjo a shot with anything because he's been incredible. Look, I think Banjo's done an incredible job. And again, super chat to jump to the front of the line. Again, thoughts on the Jets game today. And look, it was a frustrating game without question. it's tough to see. And again, Quincy Williams was asked about the issues today, didn't show up. And again, I just look at this too, like, Brees Hall, once Tyrod gets hurt, I got to do a better job around the guys. Again, I think he needs to take. I think Brees is taking more of an ownership of a leadership position. I think he's got to be a part of the long term future. But but the other thing too is for most teams, when you lose your starting quarterback, it's just frustrating because the Jets, even with Tyrod, this was going to be a tough game. But just when he went down with Brady Cook, you just knew it wasn't going to work. Jamie and Sherwood asked about Aaron Glenn taking the blame for the loss as a leader. That's what leaders tend to do. I just feel like as a coach, he did what he needed to do this week. He gave us the key to victory. He had a great week of practice. He set up in the right formations. All our position coaches did what they had to do. As players, when we step between the lines, there's no more coach at that point. AG can't save us. Linebacker coach, whoever, they can't save us. We've got to go out there and perform every Sunday. And today we didn't uphold that standard. And I mean, I do think the Jets are showing some accountability. Brady Cook went over his 2 interceptions today, and I'm fascinated to see because, especially with the groin too, because I'm trying to remember the Panther game. I know it was a lower body injury, and if you guys can remind me, I can't remember if it was a knee or groin with Tyrod. But again, Tyrod's been nicked up so much this year. You just can't rely on him long term. And, the big question now is, what does this team do down the stretch? Should they just fully go with Brady Cook? I mean, and the other thing, too, is how many winnable games. Like, I felt like today was kind of a pivoting point. I think the Saints is still a winnable game. But now against Jacksonville, I'm not sure how that game's going to go. You look at the last 2 against the Patriots and the Bills. I just get the feeling that those 2 teams are going to be playing because, like I said, the AFC is so crowded right now with talent. But the thing that if I had to be really upset about with anything today, and this once again is why I think Wilkes needs to be fired, is just the technique and the simple game plans on the defense. And that goes back to the preparation. And I know Jamie and Sherwood said, look, this isn't on the coaches. They put us in the right formations. They put us in the right places today. But you form habits over time. And again, I know it's tough with the new coaching staff. Those habits take a while to catch on. But right now, they've been going through this program since June. They've been going through these techniques. And you know what the coaches take pride in, and you know what the coaches want you to work for. And just seeing the little technique stuff, just getting blown off the ball, like this is a problem with this team. And unfortunately, this defense, I think we're starting to see the impact of the type of defense they want to play. Aaron Glenn wants a bigger, more physical defense. He doesn't want this lighter, undersized but fast unit like under Robert Saleh. And you saw it today. And one injury that I think really reared its head today, unfortunately, was Brownlee. Because when Brownlee was out there, when he plays slot corner, he is basically a hybrid type of linebacker in the scheme because he's such a big corner. And I wouldn't rule it out for the Jets to kind of draft another guy like him on day 3, a more bigger physical corner, or maybe a hybrid safety corner that can play in line, but is that hybrid linebacker. Because as much as I love Quincy, the linebackers especially, it feels like square pegs in a round hole. Like, it just feels like in this defense, like they have not been comfortable all season. The first few games when they were getting beat in pass coverage, well, it's a new scheme, it's a new system, it's positioning. But today it was a lot of what I saw last year. And I like Sherwood, I like Quincy, but you basically have the same guy. And unfortunately, when you want to have a bigger physical defense, yeah, you can have one of those guys in the linebacking core. You can have a small weak side linebacker like that can run around, maybe coming off blitz packages. But when your two primary linebackers are both undersized and guys that operate in space, and you're getting, and we saw it how many times last year with teams when the offensive line got to that level, it can make some big plays. And one of the guys I highlighted in the pre-show coming into today was Kiko. I thought this could be a big breakout game for Kiko because he's a bigger linebacker. I thought this could be an opportunity for him to showcase himself in the early running down backs because he's a more physical run-stopping middle linebacker at 230 pounds. But he got bullied today, and he was bad. And I'm at the point now, too, where I look at this team and I look at Kiko. I don't think he's a long-term fix. I think he'll be battling for a roster spot. Yeah, I think he's going to get fired at the end of the season. I don't think they're going to do it in season. One thing I would like to see is Aaron Glenn take over play calling. And I understand he's a first-year coach. I understand that he's still figuring out being a head coach. But just even tease me, like even silently take over the play calling just to see if it can change. Let's see. Slow runner. Yeah, it should have been a drop. It should have been a touchdown catch with that. Adams again. But again, we're talking about guys with Adams and Sherwood. I talked about earlier in the show. And again, Super Chat to jump to the front of the line. I don't think Sherwood's a guarantee to be on this team next year. I really don't. I think Adams is gone next year. And I'm actually going to do a show this week about potential free agents, who stays, who goes from this Jet team. And one thing I'm going to kind of focus on is also guys who might be on the bubble, who might be under contract, but might be gone. I think Sherwood is definitely one of those too. They need a Arvell Reese or Sonny Styles alongside Caleb Downs at safety. And again, Caleb Downs is a big point too, because he actually today opted out of the playoff, which I know will piss off a lot of Ohio State fans. But I mean, this is also the thing with college football. When you put so much money in, you make it all about the money. Downs understands his value. He knows he's not going to go up much more in value. The problem with Downs, and I've said this before, I would love Caleb Downs on this team. I just don't see it happening. Number one, I think the Jets are going to go move up in the draft to get a quarterback. Number two, I feel like where Downs is going to get drafted is between 8 and 12. And at that point, even in a perfect world, and again, I don't see this happening, but a quarterback the Jets want falls to them at wherever they're picking at 5 or 6. I don't know. Even the Jets are, say, picking 18th or 19th with the Colts. I'm not sure if they're going to want to add capital to move up and get a safety. And again, an elite safety when there's so many other holes to fill on this team. So again, I just don't see Arvell Reese as well. I think Arvell Reese is going to be one of the top picks in this draft. Unfortunately, I don't think the Jets are going to pick him because they're going to be picking a quarterback. Mechie and Mitchell are fighting for that 4th spot. Garrett Wilson, a high draft pick, and then a veteran. See, I've gone back and forth with a lot of people, babyface, on this. I think the number 2 receiver, and I keep seeing this, they'll draft the receiver. They'll draft the receiver. I think they'll draft the receiver. I think it will be a guy on day 3 they'll take a flyer on. For me, I think the number 2 receiver for the Jets will come via trade or free agency because if you're going to have a young quarterback, and I understand Garrett is a great receiver, I think with that number 2, you want a veteran presence. One thing that I think really was a good example, and again, I understand he had an up and down Jet career, but Corey Davis. I think Corey Davis, a guy like that who was a veteran player, was a solid number 2 receiver for this team. If you can get a big outside receiver so Garrett can work in the slot, and look, A.D. Mitchell and Mechie still have some runway in front of them. Who knows, maybe an offseason in this program, one of them will emerge as a 3 receiver. I still think both of them will have a role on next year's team. And again, they're getting reps right now in games that they probably wouldn't have with their respective teams. So I do think they are guys to keep an eye on, but I think the number 2 receiver is going to be a veteran, especially with a young quarterback potentially playing at some point next year. To me, it's better to go the veteran route there as well. For game balls today on the show, I give 3 out every week. This is a new section that I am doing. I think that it's a very short list today. My game balls today. Game ball number 1 goes to Austin McNamara, who I do think should be a Pro Bowl player. My second one goes to Isaiah Williams, who, like I said, I feel should be a Pro Bowl player. In my third game ball, which was a tough one because this one was Mason Taylor. Yes, I know he had the catch that turned an interception, but 5 catches, 51 yards. Again, I think he's been a solid tight end. And look, I think that especially after last night, there's going to be a lot of buzz for Mendoza. I think the Jets are in striking range. Again, I think in a perfect world, the Titans would be picking one, but right now you have the Giants picking one. And let's be frank, like Cleveland could go with the quarterback, although I don't know what their thoughts on Shedeur are. But when you look today, the Jacksonville pick that Cleveland has is going to be in the 20s. There's a chance that the Indy pick for the Jets is going to be in a position where it's going to be 18 or 17. Not only that, but keep in mind the Jets also have the second-round pick from Dallas. There is a world where the Jets can pretty much trade their, I think, their first, number 1, both first rounds this year, a second rounder this year. And if they even have to, I wouldn't be afraid to give them Indy's 1 next year. The one I would keep at all costs would be the other first round pick in 27, because that is the better pick of the Bears and the Cowboys. And just with how everything could go in a year, like we're seeing with the Colts, to have that flexibility to have a higher pick. And look, maybe teams will look at Indianapolis, but look, if like there could be a world where the Jets basically trade Sauce Gardner to go up and get their quarterback. And maybe they don't have to trade a second this year. Maybe they trade another second in the future and keep all 3 1s, or they keep so they have 2 1s next year. I mean, the Jets did these trades at midseason, so they had the flexibility to go and get their quarterback. Like, could you imagine right now if we still had all the cap from Sauce, we still had all the cap from Quinnen? Quinnen's basically made it known he wants out. You're not getting that close of an offer, especially on a player with a contract with no guaranteed money. Sauce Gardner, again, you just look like what picks would they have? Like, it would feel a lot worse if we came into this situation right now and we're saying, well, the Jets have the 7th pick, have their second round pick. Oh, by the way, don't have a third round pick. The fact that they have those picks gives them leverage. And look, there's a case where the Jets maybe don't win another game. But you look right now, could Washington win another game? Could New Orleans win another game, who won today? Could Cleveland win another game? Could Las Vegas win a game? Although that's not likely. Tennessee won today. The Giants, could they win? And that'll be fascinating too. Like, if Joe Shane gets the number 1 pick and is allowed to pick the head coach, like that to me would just be insane for the Giants. But look, I give Aaron Glenn credit. I think he's getting better in the press conference saying, hey, that's on me. You know, that's on me. And look, I think that he took accountability. It's, frustrating again to see this. But look, you got to give Brady Cook some effort points today. Let's be frank, how many first-team reps did he honestly get? Gets thrown in his first NFL game. Oh, by the way, you're down 21-0. And look, maybe this is, the slate he needs. He goes in there, gets beat up a little bit, doesn't have a great game. Maybe he comes back next week and you see something a little bit different. Maybe you get to see something. Again, the Jets at this point have not announced a quarterback. But if I had to put money on, I think they're going to sign someone this week just so they have the backup. But, I just get the feeling that Brady Cook, if I had to bet, is going to be playing. And I'm curious, too, because how long's Tyrod's injury? Again, a groin doesn't sound good. I mean, do they – I just don't think you can go back to Justin Fields. And I made the comment earlier that, on my preview, I felt that there was going to be a scenario where Justin Fields, because again, he finally was on the injury report. I thought he was going to be put on IR, but I do think it will be very important to see what happens again. I don't think so too. And, again, with Shedeur, the problem is Shedeur has so much noise around him. I don't think it would have worked in New York. I've said that from the beginning, and it just didn't seem like a great match. And look, yeah, that's great. Let's see him continue to do it. Again, a lot of those passes are great screen passes to Judkins behind the line of scrimmage. And again, they're not going to tank down the end of the season. Aaron Glenn is going to try to, do the culture. Cook looks better than Fields. Stick with Cook and lose all remaining games. Do you think Fields quit? This is a great question because I kind of think he did. And I think that's part of the reason he's quietly going to be put on the IR and not play. Because if you remember, they asked him, like, can you run the Wildcat? And he basically said, I'm not going to do that. And I get it. His ego's hurt. I understand that he doesn't want to be like a role quarterback. But at this point, two things for Justin. Number one, right now, you're showing other teams that your role in the NFL going forward is a backup quarterback until proven otherwise. And one of the things about being a backup quarterback is being a great team player. And if you're not getting along with teammates and a coaching staff that gave you the money, let's also be frank too. The Jets didn't just take him in on a veteran minimum. The Jets gave him a lot of money. The Jets gave him a lot of guaranteed money. The Jets gave him a lot of money that he's still going to get paid next year when they eventually cut him. So if your employer is paying you that much money, and yes, they demoted you, but they ask you to do something and you're like, I don't want to do that. Because that could be an element to this team. Because again, even though likely that Justin Fields is just in there for a running play, he probably is one of your most dynamic weapons still on this offense with his running ability. But I understand he doesn't want to be viewed as a running back. I get he doesn't want to get beat up running the football. But let's be frank, until you show that you can win from the pocket and throw from the pocket, what you haven't shown throughout your whole NFL career, a lot of teams are going to say, can you come and run and make plays and help us win a game or win a game or two as a backup quarterback? And if you're not willing to show that in the Wildcat and put good film on tape, I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. And look, we'll find out more this week. I just would not put Justin Fields back on this field. I just wouldn't. At this point, I'd let Brady Cook, especially if Tyrod's out the rest of the season. And again, we don't know how long he's going to be out. But if he's out the rest of the season, I think you just go with Brady Cook down the stretch. And look, this is just a frustrating game because deep down, even though people are rooting for the tank, I think a lot of us just want to see this team beat the Dolphins. You just want to see this team compete. You want to see this team win a division game. And look, in terms of the tank, you look at the Colts, I think that's the biggest aspect as well. But, the big thing with Brady Cook down the stretch is this. And this is very difficult because I understand we want players to be great or over exceed expectations. But here's my thoughts on Brady Cook. If he can show me over these last couple of games that he can be a capable backup, I think that's still a win for the Jets. Because we're seeing around the NFL, and especially if this league goes to 18 games, which I think it eventually will. I don't think it should, but I think it will. You're going to need to have at least a backup quarterback that can win you games and step in. And if Brady Cook can come down the stretch and say, you know what? Not as a starter, but if we need him to fill in for 2 or 3 games, we can compete. That's something to look forward to, too. And again, like I started off this show, the theme down the stretch is getting answers. You don't want more questions. You want answers. And I think you got some answers today. You have a great kick returner. You have a great punter. You have a great special teams coach. You got those answers today. I also think you got answers in A.D. Mitchell and John Mechie. They're depth pieces, but as of this moment, they're not ready to step up and be guys you can legitimately lean on next season. And you got an answer on Tyrod Taylor. He can't be your bridge. He gets hurt too much. He was banged up in the preseason, so he couldn't play. He got banged up before the game that Justin Fields should have been benched. He was too banged up to come in after the Carolina game and play the next week. Now comes into this game, plays well last week, but now he has the groin injury. It's just too much injury concerns right now. And look, Tyrod Taylor, love Tyrod Taylor. I love what he can do and when he's on the field, but you also need him to be on the field. And recently he hasn't been able to. Again, your thoughts on this Jets loss, super chat to jump to the front of the line. I just find it amazing, too. The Jets didn't win this game and now have somehow still have the 7th pick. Again, you also look at the Colts, too. Colts started 7-1, have lost 4 of their last 5. I mean, I just don't see the Colts at this point making the playoffs. I just don't. Interesting draft order as well. If the Raiders lose today, they slide into the number 2 spot. One other thing, too, is just with tanking. My opinion remains the same. You figure out how to move around the draft when you get to the end of the season. You cannot worry too much. Oops, sorry about that. You cannot worry too much about just getting the number 1 pick. Like, let's face it, the Jets are not getting the number 1 pick. But at the same time, the Jets have the picks. If they want to move up, they can do it. But the big thing is finding the quarterback. We can say all we want, that we want the Jets to draft a quarterback, but this staff sees that there's not really a franchise guy there. Then they're going to have to make pivot, and they're going to have to go out there and make a big decision. But, you know, one thing I also look at too, for this Jet team is like the drops, they did not help. I'm trying to count it up. I think the Jets had 7 drops today. I know Stone Smart had a big one. You look today too, like especially next week when you're in Jacksonville where it's nice weather, could you be able to not drop the football as much? And the big thing, too, is, yes, he had 2 interceptions in the red zone, but give him a full week of practice. Give him reps with the first team. And if the receivers can help him out, because, again, I know the offense was not great, but the play design was good today. Like, in the red zone today, the drop by Mechie was a really great design. And that's an encouraging thing for me with Engstrom. For Tanner Engstrom, you're not seeing the quote results on the paper, but like I look at that play call, you have Mechie coming into motion in the backfield, sits down almost where a running back would be, but then pivots out off the play action, is wide open in the flat, basically a walk-in touchdown and drops it. And that's the thing too with a lot of this right now. The Jets are just not a good football team. You know, Mason Taylor, again, had 5 catches but 2 drops. Isaiah Williams, a drop, but again, to me, he's a great returner. I don't put too much on him. A.D. Mitchell had a drop today. Like the receivers, they need to upgrade the receiving position. They need to continue to develop that position. And I want to see if Garrett's healthy enough to play, how it works with him down the stretch. But, I mean, overall, like I can't be too mad at Brady Cook. Because at the end of the day, Brady Cook is an undrafted free agent. And the biggest thing, and this is my biggest takeaway from Brady Cook, if Brady Cook does play down the rest of the stretch and looks like a capable backup, the Jets have an unbelievable find. Finding an undrafted kid that is your backup quarterback would be an excellent find. And that's what you should be rooting for. But the big thing I take away from today was this. We've seen a lot of kids get thrown in there. And the example I used earlier was the Minnesota quarterback who against Seattle looked like a deer in the headlights. Brady Cook made mistakes today. But again, how many reps did he take with the first team? How many times has he gone even in practice? Because let's be real, basically until this week, he wasn't even the number 2 quarterback on the depth chart. He was still the practice squad guy. Like if he gets a full week of reps of practice, will he look better next week? The big thing I saw, though, was a guy that, again, had confidence and someone that didn't look overwhelmed. I've seen a couple quarterbacks look overwhelmed. Dylan Gabriel, when he played the Jets with the Browns, he looked overwhelmed. He looked like he was panicking out there. I didn't see that from Cook. And that to me is a huge thing. The talent might not be there to be a great quarterback, but can he be an efficient backup? I think the jury's still out. And again, that's something we'll have to watch down the rest of the stretch. Great question from Babyface. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do top 4. Number 1's quarterback. We all know that. But again, I think that is too obvious. So let me look at other positions, Babyface. I'll just entertain you for a little bit. Now, again, I think there's going to be a lot of moving pieces. My number 2 would be wide receiver 2, and here's why. The Jets need this next quarterback to work. And in order to make the quarterback work, you need as many weapons as possible, and you need his nurturing environment. I do think that there are bigger holes on defense. But number 1, get a legitimate number 2 where if Garrett has to miss a week or two, can still be a good 1A receiver. Again, maybe in a trade, maybe in through free agency, but get a legitimate number 2 so you don't have the pressure. And look, I know that there's a ton of great wide receivers in this draft. But the thing with rookies is there's going to be growing pains. And I understand the idea of growing with the quarterback. But for me, I want someone that's done it before, that's a veteran. You have a ton of cap space. You can invest in a wide receiver, number 2. That, to me, is my number 1 position outside quarterback. Again, this is outside quarterback, and I think this is important, Babyface Jay. And again, Super Chat, jump in the front of the line, your comments. If you want to join us, again, like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our live stream after every Jet game. We're going to have other episodes, especially about the offseason coming up, and I'm going to do an episode this week about impending Jets free agents. My number 2 need, I would go linebacker. Because I think that the linebacker position, above all other positions of the Jets, you can make a case that they could completely gut that position. The defensive end position, I think they're going to keep both. There's a chance they may move on from McDonald or Jermaine. I don't think they move off of both. I think that the defensive tackle room, you still have a majority of that's going to come back. You have most of the secondary filled out. Again, safety is a position that I would add another body, but you have Malachi Moore back there. I think there's at least some bodies. To me, linebacker has been a liability all season. It's cost this defense, and I could see a scenario where the Jets make a big push in free agency to bring in a linebacker, go in the draft and draft a linebacker or 2, or maybe even try to get a high priority linebacker in undrafted free agency. So that would be my number 2. Number 3 would be edge, and here's why. Yes, the safety position needs an upgrade. But safety is one of those positions where I can find a potential good safety in day 3 of the draft. I can find a safety in free agency. It's very hard to find great edges or solid edges. I think you're going to see the Jets go through the draft. I think the Jets have seen the pass rush isn't good enough. And it's not just the edge, but I think you need to get like a hybrid edge. Like if John Franklin Myers is available, which again, it seems like he might for the Broncos, the Jets should jump to get him. A guy like that who can play on the outside and move to the inside is incredibly valuable. And I think that the Jets, it was a position they didn't really invest in this offseason. I think it's come back to bite them a lot this year, especially with how much reps they've had to give to Michael Clemens. So those are my top needs. And again, I tweaked them a little bit too for what I think this team really needs. So again, I think that was a very good question there. But look, this is a frustrating loss for this Jet team. I know we had a lot of high hopes. Again, I'll say I wasn't a big fan of the rivalry jerseys. I love the end zones. I think that end zone design should definitely be a stick-around one. Breece Hall missing the playoffs again. It's definitely starts to weigh on you. At the end of the day, you start to look at yourself. You see your peers and your other guys just good, if not better. And they have a lot of fun. With AJ here, I see the vision. I see how things are changed around here. We just got to be better as a team and execute what the coaches are doing. And look, I think that, in Hall on Brady Cook, I think it's really nice to see Breece Hall, I think, taking over this leadership role. I think that's something we also have to really appreciate too. Again, keep him, Darren Muji. Supreme confidence. He takes every rep in practice like a pro. As an offense, I think we could easily be making a few more plays for him and Tyrod. And look, I think he's right. You look at a lot of drops in this game. that there was definitely a lot there. Some other thoughts on this too. The Jets defense is not talented. They need to make a complete change at D coordinator. I've said this multiple times today. I've said throughout the season. The problem is any competent offensive coach we're seeing is far out scheming chunk plays. And they just look particularly lost. And again, how many times have we seen this team against the run and the quarterback boot? They have been eviscerated all year. And the teams have struggled, again, not necessarily great offensive coaches, but you see the great offensive coaches, they're like, hey, Jets can't stop this. They keep biting on it. They also need to, get more. They need more juice at edge. JJ and Will McDonald, they need another third player to not only push them, I think, but also give someone to give them a little bit of a break. And look, I think that, they've both been disappointing this year. Outside of a couple of flash moments, for the most part, they've been quiet. But I think Tanner did a good job with the scheme. Cook had a couple of open passes. But again, when you're not getting help from your wide receivers at tight ends with multiple drops, the running game has gone sluggish because, again, I think the teams are daring the Jets to throw the football, and right now they can't. And, the last thing, too, is, this is a frustrating game, and this is a bad look for this coaching staff because you also need to be guys that go into this, and you have to win your division games because there's a good chance the Jets finish 0-6 in the AFC East this year. And if you're going to really start moving the needle, you got to start splitting with the Patriots, splitting with the Bills, and realistically, if you want to make the playoffs, the Dolphins are going to be that team that you're going to have to take 2 games from, or at the bare minimum split. Because I'll tell you this, I think that they're going to run it back with Mike McDaniel and Tua. I just think that they're in a position now where they're not bad enough to take a quarterback and bottom out. I think that they realize Tua's the best with McDaniel. So I think that they're coming back for another year. But again, Miami is going to be like a 500 team. You got to also really look at, the other big lesson from today too is something that I think Darren Muji has been trying to address, but you really need to hit in the draft. And the one thing I was very critical, and I think a lot of us were, and even at the time I was critical, was how the Jets handled day 3. I think the Jets did a great job the first 2 days of the draft. Day 3, I feel like a lot of the moves that they have made during this season, whether it's adding D tackles, whether it's adding pieces to this defense, are clearly a response to how bad the day 3 picks were. Arian Smith was a project player, basically was benched last week, comes in, gets an opportunity on special teams, and has a dumb play where he puts his phone on the line. You look at how bad that pick has been and how nothing of a pick that has been. It has been incredibly frustrating. So the other big thing too is I don't mind trading up necessarily in the draft, but I have a rule. If it's day 3, and unless it's a guy you really love and you clearly have a plan for, I'd rather trade back and keep my assets. They liked Malachi Moore. And yes, he has moments. But I do think with Moore, I can see a spot for him on this team going forward. The other picks on that day really bother me. And the biggest one was Tyler Barron. Because he was inactive again today. If you were trading up for Tyler Barron, who many, including myself, thought was a priority free agent, someone that probably was going to make it to that point, and you could sign him as an undrafted free agent, to not only trade up for him was, to me, a very bad decision. I thought it was not a well thought out one. I thought that it was something that the Jets regret. I remember saying at the time, it wasn't even that they trade a pick from the Ravens, a pick that was in this draft to move. I'm like, what are you doing? Like that to me did not make any sense. And when we looked at Arian Smith, we knew that this was a project player. We understood that this was a guy who has world-class speed. But this is a guy that needed a lot of work and a lot of polish. And I look around on that board right now, like Woody Marks, the running back from Houston. And I know the Jets had a good running back room, but again, he's already had 2 touchdowns in the NFL. I look at other guys that are on the board. Billy Bowman, the safety from Atlanta, has already got a sack and a half, a pick, this year. He was on the board. Gunnar Helm from Tennessee, the tight end, was on the board. I wouldn't have minded if they double dip there at the tight end position. But then I understand that there's no perfect players in the draft. I understand that, especially a lot of that is a bunch of crapshoot. But I look at Alike Anamor. He's got 339 yards. He was on the board with the Titans. I don't get that. And I know some people are going to put in the chat Shedeur Sanders. Look, the Jets were not going to take the risk with Shedeur. They just were not going to do it. So just ignore that. They weren't going to do that at all. But I just look at Kiko, at pick 162. I thought that was an overdraft. And I look right there. You have Gadsden, the second, the tight end for the Chargers, is on the board with 534 yards. But I don't get why he wasn't considered. And then you come back in around 5 to finish with Tyler Barron. And just looking at the board, guys still available, I just look like Ollie Gordon, who torched it today, was still there. I would have rather taken a developmental quarterback, at least someone that could maybe come in. Riley Leonard was on the board, who played today for the Colts. I would at least taken a rookie quarterback with that last pick. That was the thing too. They could have kept an extra pick, drafted another player to compete, and draft another, even just a quarterback just to compete, or at least have some sort of backup plan. So again, I think today was another rough day when you look back at what this front office did. Really frustrating. Again, super chat to jump to the front of the line, your comments about the Jets game today. And look, it's frustrating because you want to win these games, but I also understand a portion of the fan base that they're happy about today. That they basically are able to have their cake and eat it too. They get to not only watch the Colts draft pick plummet, but now they also get to see the Jets. And again, for everyone that wants the tank, it's such a great thing the Jets lost today. It's such a great thing the Jets lost today. The Jets their pick hasn't moved. And with Tyrod Taylor, as much as I love him and as much as I was hoping he could back, he if he wants to come back as a third string or a quarterback developer, I really wouldn't mind that, but he cannot be this team's bridge. Yeah, it wasn't good today, Drones. It really wasn't. And look, I'll wrap up with this. The theme of this episode and the theme down the stretch is finding answers. And I've come to a couple of answers today. They're not great answers, but answers do one thing. They provide you clarity. And we've learned definitively, number one, Steve Wilkes should be fired and shouldn't be this team's defensive coordinator in 2026. On the flip side, the Jets have an elite special teams coach and special teams unit. Number two, we've learned that John Metch and A.D. Mitchell, while nice and probably depth pieces, should not be penciled in as your number 2 or 3 receivers next year. You need to go out and invest there. We've also gotten an answer to this linebacking core needs to be blown up. I don't know if Kiko's a borderline player next year, but maybe you keep Quincy, but they have to either move on from Sherwood. They have to address that position and add talent to that position because it has been woeful, and today it was bad. And we also got another answer. Tyrod Taylor cannot be this bridge quarterback. How many times this year has Tyrod Taylor's health hurt this team? Yes, Justin Fields was able to pull out the win in Cincinnati, but Tyrod Taylor probably would start that game. I had a theory that in London, Tyrod was still nicked up, and that's why they didn't go to him in that game. And there was a reason why they kept going with Justin Fields was because Tyrod Taylor was not healthy. And don't forget to start the preseason. Tyrod wasn't healthy throughout training camp. So for me, Tyrod Taylor is just too fragile at this point. And I don't know what he wants to do. Does Tyrod Taylor want to continue to play? Does he feel like he deserves another shot somewhere? Does he feel like he doesn't want to be a mentor but just wants to be a backup quarterback? I mean, we're also looking at the point, too. He's played in the league for 14 years. Maybe Tyrod Taylor just decides, look, my body can't recover anymore. There's a chance Tyrod Taylor just decides, you know what? That's it for me. Because, again, Tyrod Taylor, don't forget now, he's gone up there. I mean, he's 36. There's not exactly a lot of 36-year-old quarterbacks in the National Football League. So I'm curious what he will do. I mean, again, I would have loved Jameis Winston if they could have pulled that off. But, I mean, look, it's frustrating. There's going to be a lot of talk about this offseason. We're going to talk about that later this week about guys that are on potential free agents and what I think the Jets should do with them. It's also official, too, that Daniel Jones has a torn Achilles. So, again, that greatly impacts the Jets drafts, not only this year, but in 2027. And you look, too, right now, for everyone that was like, oh, we need the tank. The Jets lost, and guess what? They didn't move up a draft pick. So it's definitely interesting to see, too, how, with how this team has performed. But I just look at this today as a game where I'm like, okay, we learned a lot, and not necessarily all of it was good. But with this team, they need to make big changes. I think we've known that. I think we've seen that this year. But the big thing, too, is they need to get the quarterback. And I think they have the ammo to go up and get this quarterback. The big thing you want, if you're rooting for the Jets to get a quarterback, and I understand the Giants won't like trading with the Jets, but you want the Giants and Tennessee to be up there. Because Cleveland would probably take a quarterback. Vegas would take a quarterback. New Orleans would take a quarterback. You want the Giants and Tennessee. And look, the Giants' schedule, I looked at it, maybe one more win. I just don't see it. But the big thing you want is you want the Colts to continue to fall off. And if they miss the playoffs, bare minimum, you're going to have the 18th pick. And the way it's going with the Colts, it might be better than that. Because we might have a lot of teams hovering around that 8-9, 9-8, basically line. Because right now, you have a lot of teams that have 6 wins that could they get 2 or 3 more wins the rest of the season? Definitely. So, frustrating game, ugly game to watch, not only because of the uniforms, but just how the team performed. But I think that Justin Fields is gone for this team as this quarterback. I think Brady Cook, if Tyrod Taylor's hurt, is this team's quarterback down the stretch, and you want to see him prove that he can at least be a viable backup. But basically, like I've been saying, the home stretch is all about getting answers for 2026 and not providing more questions. Thank you, everyone, for joining us at this episode of Rich Sports Talk. Make sure to like and subscribe so you'll miss our live streams after every single Jets game and, of course, the Jets content we have coming throughout the offseason. Also, check us out wherever podcasts are available. You want to take us in your pocket or just recap the show, you can listen to us wherever podcasts are available. Jets fall to the Dolphins. We will be back, of course, next week after the Jaguars and, of course, to do our show previewing Jets' potential free agents for 2026. All that and much more coming up in future episodes of Rich Sports Talk. We will see you next.